Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Pear. As my fill-in host today, I have Benny Ehrlich, who's taking the place of my real co-host, Jacob Barbaum, who's at overnight camp right now. And today, me and Benny are going to be interviewing NBA and NFL agent from Shark Sports Management, Glenn Schwartzman. Glenn, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Great to be with you guys.
So, Glenn, as someone who went to law school, was it always the plan for you to become an agent, or was that something that just happened?
Back when I started out, believe it or not, now there's more agents than there are players. But back then, there was just a handful of agents, and I always kind of knew I wanted to get into this. But I felt like if I went to law school, if I signed guys, they either left me or got injured or whatever. I had a fallback position. So I always wanted to do it. I started out, which I'll talk about later, but I got into it at an early age, and I knew it's what I wanted to do. But law school was a vehicle to prepare me better for it, and also as a backup in case things didn't work out.
So, I mean, if you weren't becoming an agent, was there any other lawyer positions that you were looking at?
Not really. I certainly, enjoy having some of those legal skills, and it's been helpful with these clients because a lot of the stuff that comes up beside the contract negotiations and all that, a lot of the things that you deal with are legally related. It could be reviewing a real estate deal, it could be domestic relations issues, it could be a whole bunch of different things. And a lot of it's labor law, which is a big part of it with the collective bargaining stuff. But I never really thought about practicing law. I always wanted to do this, but I kind of just knew I could at least practice law and still dabble in sports had I not been successful and be able to represent players for the past 30 years.
Yeah, so you talk about contract negotiations, and as fans, we always see Schefter and Rappaport and Woj tweeting about this contract, but as fans, we don't really know what goes behind the contract negotiations. So can you take us behind the scenes of an actual contract negotiation?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, to me, anytime you do a contract, a successful one, unless you have a superstar, if you have Patrick Mahomes or someone like that, it's going to come to you. I mean, the deal is going to just come to you. He's going to get what he wants. He's going to set the market. He's going to be the highest paid. But for most players, even good ones, it's building the relationship. So, during a contract never happens in a meeting or in a couple of meetings. It's really talking to the team over the course, say, of a season for guys in a contract year, attending games, having dinner or drinks or breakfast with general managers and decision makers, um, building your case, preparing the statistical ammunition you need to differentiate why your player deserves a value. The days of saying, "Oh my gosh, you get 20 million." Well, why should he get 20 million a year? So backing it up, understanding what your client brings to a particular team and what intangibles he has that could impact winning. Or attendance of fans and things like that. So relationship building, preparation, and then sometimes it happens. It can be over this year with COVID. It was a very strange year. We did some deals like either Zoom like what we're doing here or over the phone. But usually it's in person is always better, and but it's built up over time, leading up to the culmination of exchanging numbers and then some back and forth and maybe three or four conversations, and then you reach a deal. You know.
So you said you meet with decision makers throughout the year. Obviously, clients on their own team meet with their general manager. Do you meet with general managers from other teams as well throughout the season, or do you wait till free agency for that?
Well, you technically we have rules as to when we have the kind of legal period when you can talk to teams, and then the signing period in the different sports, which is ahead of the signing period. But we're always networking. I've been doing this for a long time, so I know every NBA and NFL general manager and decision maker. So if I went to see a client on the Colts and they were playing Arizona, and say I had no one on the Arizona Cardinals, I'd probably go on the field pregame and talk to Steve Keim, who's the Cardinals general manager, or so on and so forth. So you're always networking and building it in case you can't really be pitching the guy per se, because that's obviously in violation of the different rules. But you certainly can talk about guys you have with them and have conversation and build rapport, and so that you're in position when it comes time that leverage comes from having at least one other team. So you certainly want to have teams know that you represent so and so and he'll be a free agent, but they all have those lists. It's just a way of just touching them and keeping you on their mind. So when the time comes, they'll circle with you and enter into hopefully serious contract negotiations.
So in a year of a contract negotiation, sometimes a player would hold out or not participate in a training camp or in the NBA, their preseason. Are you for or against holding out?
Well, I'm generally against it. I had one situation where I had a player who was about to get the franchise tag with the Colts, who was a tight end, and basically it was hours before camp, and he wasn't going to go because just didn't want to play for the tag. And I supported him. I'd represented him 4 years at the time, but I also told him I'd like him to go in and use that as leverage, but ultimately go in. And about 20 minutes before the start of camp, we reached a deal to make him the highest paid tight end in the NFL at the time. And but I'm generally not for it because I feel like if you're prepared, if you have there's some difficult teams that you could be prepared and you could have a great player, and they hold their line, and even if it's unreasonable, that's just their line, and you might not have leverage because you may be what's called a restricted free agent, where you have to go out, either get an offer sheet, or you could be an exclusive rights free agent where you can only negotiate with that team. So you're kind of between a rock and a hard place in that situation. But I always think it's avoidable generally if you're prepared, I always try to make it a win-win with these teams. I mean, obviously anytime you negotiate, by nature, by definition, you're adversarial in the sense that you're trying to get the most for your player and they're trying to pay the least amount they can in general. Even if they love somebody, that's what they're trying to do. So the job is to kind of make it a win-win where, the player's getting a good deal, the team feels they're getting a good player at a fair price. And, but it doesn't always work that way. And so I've never had a holdout in 30 years. I had the one guy that held out, technically said he wasn't going, but we got it done within an hour and a half. But, he would have held out and I would have supported him, obviously, because it was unique. I just generally don't believe in it as a good strategy.
So you mentioned a specific case with the tight end. Now, like in the NFL, we see the tight end university coming up because their argument is that they get paid half of an offensive lineman and the wide receiver and asked to do the same amount. How do you feel about that whole situation going on right now?
Well, you look at somebody like Kyle Pitts, who just, was obviously the top tight end this year's draft. And he's a unique talent, I think, and obviously he just did his deal. But in the draft, things are pretty slotted. It'll be interesting to see if a guy like that plays up to his potential when he goes on the market, what kind of deal he would get if he's going to be treated as, as more of a receiver and paid like that, or more lodged into that lower level. But I know that, like the guy I spoke about, when he was a tight end at the time, there was a Pro Bowl receiver that he had caught as many balls as that year. But at the end of the day, I had to explain to him and educate him that the position is just viewed differently, even though the tight end, to your point, is so valuable, and does so much is expected from tight ends, especially in certain offenses. But just that's the perception. It's hard to overcome. It's hard to say, well, he really should be paid like this because he brings this. We certainly make those arguments, but a lot of times they're on deaf ears. I remember years ago, I had a guy who was a good player and he's never played college football. So my argument, even when he was 30, was like, he's like a 26-year-old. He's fresh, and it's cool to say it, but whether they believe it or not, I mean, I did believe it to a degree, but you have to say it because you're trying to find whatever hook you can to maximize a guy's earning potential, especially in football with the short lifespan these guys have in the National Football League versus the NBA or baseball, where you have much longer careers.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to move on to a different topic and talk about your agency, Shark Sports Management. The CEO of the company is Damon John, who we all know from Shark Tank. Why did you decide to form this partnership with Damon?
So about several years ago, we were up at the NBA draft, and we're myself and my other partners were close with Mark Cuban. We've had a bunch of guys on the Dallas Mavericks, and one of our clients still coaches there. But we've had Jae Crowder and Dennis Smith and tons of guys, and know Mark very well. And we're going up to New York, and we're talking about the idea of talking to him. And Damon was up in New York, and Damon's attorney, who's a partner of ours, also as an agent, has guys like Anthony Tolliver that was just there in the Sixers end of the year, veteran guys, and known him for a long time. And we talked about the idea of trying to make a difference in the marketplace, because everyone's doing what they're doing and just trying to, get the guys the contracts and the marketing deals. But how can we care about guys in terms of teaching them financial intelligence? Damon's obviously a branding guy, helped start the Kardashian show, started FUBU, started, help with Catherine Zeta-Jones, which was the single biggest marketing plan with her T-Mobile of any endorsement deal outside of like the Jordan deal with Nike. So, so we felt like, how can we be different and really give back and help guys instead of just being agents and just, doing the typical thing. So Damon's really, I mean, he likes sports, but I wouldn't say he's a sports guy, but he's a guy that just wants to help people. He came up and not for much, made some money, lost it, and then came back and made a lot of money. He's done really well. And he wants people to learn from what he's gone through. And we thought it was a great message to bring out to our current athletes as they look to wind down their careers and look for business opportunities, and then up and coming athletes as they embark on their pro careers, you know, that he would be a real asset, a real value add with his business Rolodex. He's one of the top business speakers in the country, and guys could learn a lot because he's kind of seen every kind of business, not just in the show, but in his professional career. And so, and then all these guys nowadays are about, you know, yeah, you can get me a, you know, a shoe deal, a contract, but, and you can, you know, be there for me in other ways, but it's about branding. I want to build out my brand and through social media and other platforms. And certainly he's done a great job of it, and his team is available to us for our athletes. So we're really excited that he saw the vision that he had, and we've come together. It's been tremendous.
So would you say his personality and the way he acts is very similar to the way he's on TV, or is he a pretty different person?
It's kind of similar. I mean, he's a serious guy. He's a really nice guy. He's a very personable guy. Obviously different being on a show and versus sitting with him one-on-one or in a small setting, but he's really committed to everything he does. He's one of the smarter people I know, and he sincerely cares. You know, sometimes people in that position that have had the success he's had may not, but he really does. I mean, I think he's genuine, and he's a real value add and a really important person as these guys get going, because they can learn so much from him. Even though we all have things we bring to the table, we think he brings another unique skill set that hopefully differentiates us. Will hopefully over time from our competition.
So you brought up one of your clients, Jae Crowder, who's tonight. He is a big game. He's a chance to go to.
We're checking in our finals ticket tonight. Hopefully, we're trying to get that done tonight. So
yeah, and he's been.
We're gonna do it their night, but we'll have to do it in LA.
I mean, and he's been a huge part of the team's success and potentially going to second straight finals. But why did he decide to sign with Phoenix?
So we had a lot of teams. We had 6 or 7 teams that we're in talks with. Obviously, it was a weird year last year with the bubble and the length of the season and the timing of it. You know, Miami really obviously valued him in that they brought him over, and he was a big part of their run to the finals last year. And they wanted to bring him back, but we wanted to find a place where we could be there long term, and I think they were willing to certainly pay him and have him. But we wanted to go to a place where he could be long term, and I think they were hoping to be in a position to attract in this next year a big free agent like Giannis or one of those guys who since went back and signed the Supermax deal with the Bucks. But I think that was the belief. They wanted to be in a position for this upcoming year with all the big free agents and the Bradley Beals and some of these guys. And so that was their belief. And so when we looked at it, Jay just felt that, and we looked at it when Chris Paul made the move to come over, and he's always respected all those young players, but he was in the game when Booker scored 70 or whatever in that one game. So it was a guy that he had seen it with Donovan Mitchell and other young players. He hadn't seen Devin hadn't been on that stage, and he felt like he was ready for it. And I think he's, you know, that 40-point triple-double in game one, and hopefully he had a strong game this last game, even though they lost. And hopefully Devin, you know, puts him over the top tonight. Now that I think Chris is probably back going at a good level, I expect tonight he'll have a strong game, and hopefully Cameron Payne will be fully, you know, healthy and explosive again. But yeah, I think he just saw, you know, respected Coach Williams and the approach that James Jones and the whole front office took. And, you know, he believed they could win. He looks like a genius, because it's like a team hadn't been in the playoffs in 10 years, and you go from the finals to this team that, even though they had some nice young pieces and Aiden and Bridges and certainly Booker, but he felt with Chris Paul and then his veteran leadership that they could work together and, you know, be a playoff team and, you know, hope to be competitive for a championship. And I think this has exceeded things, but we'll all be bitterly disappointed if they don't, you know, win out the series, and hopefully tonight, because, you know, even though I'm confident they win, even if it's 7, we'd like it to end tonight and let them get some rest, because with the other series now, which was amazing, that Atlanta found a way last night without Trae Young, which shows you all these teams are without key guys, whether it's Kawhi or this or that. So when they come together like that, it's quite impressive, you know. So he kind of had a feel, but real belief that these young players were ready for that big stage, and that him combined with Chris Paul, that they could get him to where they were trying to get. And, obviously they've done a tremendous job.
So you mentioned that the Suns were looking to land the big free agent before, yeah, and then maybe
No,
Giannis.
the Heat were.
Sorry. What's the reaction around the league from agents and other GMs that we don't get to see when a guy like Giannis signs a big extension or someone like Kawhi signs a big contract?
Well, obviously, it'd be like equating it to something in real estate. If you're in real estate and somebody sold a house in your marketplace for a high number, that certainly helps you, unless the person's going to get all the houses to, sell for a high number and make more money. So I think when people get good deals, long as it's not in place of the guy you're representing, it's always a positive. It means that especially after what the NBA went through last year with the loss of fans and other revenue streams, to see people go out and still spend those type of dollars, even though some money's been in escrow, which is a whole complicated mechanism of the collective bargaining agreement. But yeah, because of the labor situation and because of the force majeure with the COVID situation. But I think that it's a situation where people are excited about it because it means we're back. And now when you watch these games and you look at the full crowds, I was out in Phoenix for the Lakers series, and you're in full stadiums with everyone. It's like life is back and revenues are back. And, so I think we just had this meeting today. We're going to go back to 82 games next year, and it's going to be the way it was. So I think people like to see positive momentum, in the industry, and other guys getting good contracts is usually a good thing for the industry.
And now, what was the feel around the league this season with the condensed schedule? Were players mad because of all the injuries that were happening, or did they understand?
I think players understood because, obviously, there's been a high number of guys. I know LeBron came out and others talked about that schedule, and, him and AD getting hurt and other guys you see around the league, and, some serious injuries, some not. But certainly by the end of a season, guys usually are beat up by wear and tear anyway. It was condensed, but people understood that had they not made the agreement to start with those Christmas Day games, and if they had not played the semblance of a season with 72 games versus say like 50 or 60, then they would have all taken a hit in the revenues, and that may not affect a superstar like LeBron and others that make so much money off the court, but it definitely would have an impact on people that are just more regular players, good players that count on that revenue, because you never know how many years you can play, So I think they understood it was a compromise. Everyone tried to make it work. It wasn't ideal, obviously. It was tough, but I think they did. I think Adam Silver does a good job, and I think they did as well as they could do with the obstacles. It was tough for people like LA and Miami, people on those teams that had played so late, and then to turn around and have to start again and having no time to let their bodies heal up or freshen up and get right. But they were able to get through it, and I think it's been a good product, some good compelling storylines, and I think the NBA has had a lot of nice success with some of their young players breaking through, Luka and Trae Young and Devin Booker and all these, and Donovan Mitchell, and and being big storylines for the future of the sport. So it's been good, and the revenue streams were important to maintain for the league with the TV partners and all the ancillary revenue things.
So I want to pivot from the NBA to the NFL. And your company, Shark Sports, represents Baker Mayfield. When do you think Baker will get a deal done, and what type of expectations do you have for his deal?
I really can't comment on that. Obviously, Baker had a tremendous year. My partner, Tom Mills, and his dad, Jack, are the primary agents for Baker. Obviously, we represent a lot of guys in the Browns. Baker's had a great year, and you see what some of these quarterback deals look like, and certainly Baker deserves to be right there at the top of the hierarchy. So, whether it be now or a year from now, I feel good that eventually they'll get something done, but I'm not in a position to speak for Baker directly, other than to say that, in football, the quarterback position, and more than any sport, any position, is the most important. So for the Browns, who had such a tough bad luck and a bad run, to get back into the playoffs and be as competitive as they were and get great play at that position, I feel confident they'll do the right thing. They have a great general manager in Andrew Berry. They have a really good coach and organization, and I think they're committed to winning and continuing and not being a one-off. So I expect something to get done. I just don't know if it'll be, before training camp this year, into the season, or next season. But I feel like he'll be the long-term quarterback in Cleveland for sure.
Yeah, me too. I mean, a lot of people were saying that he was going to be the next Johnny Manziel, but if you saw him at Oklahoma, you knew he was going to be explosive and amazing in the NFL. So I think
Yeah,
Baker's.
he's just got great decision making and great leadership, and doesn't, nothing really rattles him, and he's a great competitor, and it seems to be a good fit for what they're trying to do out there in Cleveland and putting together a pretty good program.
When you're in the situation, this can be basketball or football, and you have a guy like Baker or a player who is going to get a contract or you're trying to get him a contract, but you have players that are also looking at contracts. Do you wait for them to get them and then you try to get your guy? For example, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are up for extension soon. Do you try to let the other guys go first, or do you want your guy to go first typically?
I think it's really case by case. I mean, obviously, if you think somebody's going to set the market, so say, we won't even use Baker, but let's just say, like one of my clients, Cody Parkey, that used to play for the Eagles. Let's say Cody Parkey is a free agent, and there's in the kicker for the Dolphins, Jason Sanders, has a Pro Bowl year, and they're both the only two free agents. In that case, you might want to see what Jason Sanders gets if you think that can help you to get more to justify it, or a kicker that's similar that gets overpaid could be helpful to justify your position while your guy deserves what he has. But you really can't rely on that. You really have to be prepared for your guy and go after it like he's the only person at that position in the market, be it a kicker or a quarterback, and prepare for it. So I mean, if you think something's coming quickly, sometimes the union will, give us information that'll be helpful so we're prepared, do a good job for our players. But I don't like to really wait on anything, but sometimes it may make sense case by case. But I generally proceed as if we're the only one at that position. But obviously a good deal at your position could be helpful. Conversely, if you wait and somebody takes, is either inexperienced agent or doesn't really understand their value and takes a below market deal, they'll use that against you all day long. So there's risk in waiting sometimes, because you have somebody come with something that was way below, and they'd be like, well, he had a better year statistically than your guy, and now you're really in a tough situation, and you're like, well, it's not our fault that guy did a bad deal, but here's why. But it becomes much more challenging to overcome a bad deal. So I think it's good to be aggressive and get out there if you're prepared, but sometimes it can help. And sometimes it can hurt.
I mean, sticking with kickers, your former client Jay Feely in 2009 tweeted, "Sitting with my agent Glenn Schwartzman, watching Michigan game. Best agent in the business. Great agent, great friend. Best of both worlds." With someone with such a high status in the agent world, what do you believe is the most important ingredient for a successful client and agent relationship?
Well, I think as you get into it more, you get in a position of being hopefully more selective in who you represent. You look for like-minded people, not having similar backgrounds. They come from all backgrounds and all different situations, but just good values, good people. People that will work as hard as you do, where there's mutual respect. And I think it's about just being candid and honest, and just being real and authentic with people. Most people in our business will tell guys what they want to hear to sign them, and then they'll lose them right away because they said, "Oh, I can get you 10 million. And the guy's only worth $1 million a year." They may sign him because that sounds great, and then they lose him. So I think you have to be comfortable with who you are as an agent, and not try to be who you're not. And that you may not get everybody that way, but you'll be able to hold on to them. Like you mentioned, Jay Feely. I have so many guys that like Jay Feely and Daryl Armstrong and Marcus Power that have played, 10, 15 years, that I still represent either as a coach or as a broadcaster, way beyond their playing careers, and friendships that endure by doing it the right way. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't guarantee it, and there's always going to be people that you're not going to connect with, or people change over time. But if you can be yourself and be true to who you are and be that way with them, they're going to respect you. At least know that you're there to go to war with them every day, because it's easy to represent a guy when it's going well, like you brought Baker Mayfield the other day. But if a guy struggles and is dropping passes or missing kicks or missing shots in NBA, it's, are you there for them then? And it's not about just being there with a pep talk. It's, are you there to help navigate their career, support them and their family, deal with adversity? Because there's going to be adversity in sports. For every great moment, there's somebody that, every winner, there's a loser. Every success, there's a failure, and so you have to have someone that's there no matter what, and be consistent in their uh, reliability and in their availability and things like that, and be there to support them.
Well, Glenn, we want to thank you so much for coming on today, because we know you're a busy guy and you have a busy schedule. But before we let you
My
go,
pleasure. My pleasure.
We have one last question for you. Who do you believe is the toughest negotiator you've ever had to negotiate a deal with?
That's a good question. Boy, oh boy. I mean, probably. I mean, I thought Bill Polian, who used to ran the Colts and St. Chris's in the NFL, was just really tough because he's more of those old school negotiators, and he's really good. He built some success in multiple franchises and getting people Super Bowls and playoffs. And his opinion was, he was just very direct and firm on his position. And it's hard to move the needle with him. He was actually the one that I had the brief holdout with for the hour and a half. But we ended up coming to a deal, which was great. But that was tough because usually I feel like I can talk to anybody and kind of find some common ground, even if we can agree to disagree, but we can keep it moving. And that was one where I was kind of hit a wall and I was forced to really to consider the holdout. So I'd say he was probably, it's a long time ago, but I remember that being tough. The other ones, I always feel like there's always challenges with a lot of different people, and some people have different styles. Some people are real cool with you, but they would stab you in a minute. Some people are tough, but they're really nice and sincere. You have to read the room, but he was tough. I mean, I respect him, and I'm nothing bad to say about him, but he was tough because he was hard to move because he was so in a position, probably because he had a lot of leverage at the time, and he was very well respected, and it was just really hard to challenge him on certain things, even though I thought I was well prepared. And that was early in my career, but he's someone I remember being pretty tough.
Well, Glenn, thank you again for coming on today, and hopefully we can do it again. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good talking to you guys. You all take care.